Thanks for tuning in to the AZ Wildcats podcast brought to you by DraftKings. $5 down on these NBA play-in games. Last time you get in on this one, and if you win, you get $100 in free plays. Bet on the Hawks tonight. There's my lucky call. Now, joined by one of the Dons, one of the Mount Rushmores of the Tucson, Arizona athletics scene, Mr. Luke Brad Allis. Hello, William.
I didn't know they made Rushmore for a second run, but that's fine.
But you know what? Or either way, a Saguaro Cougar. Shout out to Sean Seeley right there on the Mount Rushmore. Bear down, back the A, whichever one you prefer. All right, Brad, a lot to get to. First and foremost, Ben Mathurin declares yesterday. My opinion of Ben Mathurin is this. I believe that he is going to be looked at he's going to be looked at in very kind views a long time from now for a couple different reasons. First, he was the front and center player of kind of the resurgence of Arizona basketball. And I can make the case, and this is something that's unique, I can make the case that he has been the best perimeter player here for the last 12, 13 years, which is something that's pretty impressive when you think about Arizona basketball.
Yeah, you've mentioned that before, and I'm like, no. And then you're like, wait, Stanley, no. Solomon, no. Trier, no. And you're right.
Nick Johnson, no.
Yeah, you look at, I think maybe Nick's the guy you could have the biggest argument since he was Pac-12 Player of the Year, but you're drafting the team to go play in the tournament. Who you taking, Nick Johnson or Ben Mathurin? You're taking Ben Mathurin. So I think it's interesting because really the irony, I think, is the legacy of Sean Miller is going to be mostly big men.
Right.
If you look at the guys who are having success in the pros, you're looking at DeAndre Ayton, you look at Aaron Gordon, you look at guys who had success on the college level. It's Derek Williams, who was a power forward, although he could do perimeter things. So yeah, Mathurin is right there. I don't know. Do we have to go back to Jared Bayless?
That's where I go back to.
Buttinger.
Honestly,
I think Mathurin's probably better than Buttinger.
Brad, I go back to Jared Bayless, to be honest with you, because Jared Bayless was a little bit obviously over. I think Jared Bayless gets lost in the whole thing because he played during the KO team. No offense to my guy, but he really wasn't on that. He's better than I think people remember him at. Until Ayton came along, he was the best freshman in school history, or at least, Lute Olson era on. 25-5. But this guy, Ben Mathurin, I think is clearly the best player since then. And if you wanted to say that he's better than Bayless, you probably have to go back to Salim.
Yeah. I guess we can get Nick Pitti and was it Hassan, but Hassan's best season was as the undersized power forward. But yeah, you have to go back. Technically Aaron Gordon was a small forward, but I'd take Mathurin over Aaron Gordon, frankly.
Right.
So yeah, I think you get to that point, and I think you can make the argument at the least. And the more and more you think about it, the harder pressed you are to find a better player and one who's probably going to have a better pro career. There's a chance Mathurin doesn't succeed, but look at the wings under Miller. Most of them have not made much of an impact. Most of the two guards have certainly not made an impact at the NBA level. So yeah, I think you've got that argument.
Besides being a really cool boss, and it's a privilege to work for Saul Bookman, he disagrees with Jared Bayless. But Brad, I got something to tell you. Who do you think holds the AIA record for consecutive made free throws in a high school basketball season? You can look it up. Who do you think holds that record?
I'm going to say Saul Bookman.
Saul Bookman does hold that record. The coolest thing ever that he doesn't ever talk about. That's why I have to talk about it for him.
Yeah. And, I know his son's a heck of a pitcher. I may need to pick his brain. My son's struggling a little bit on the mound, so I may have to pick his brain at some point.
Yeah. All right. So sorry, Saul. I had to get that one in there. But yes, pick the brain if you can. All right. Now, let's move on to where we think I like Mathurin in the NBA. I think that I think the game's built for him, to be honest with you. A lot of people had questions. Was he going to be that, the three? Can he be a three? Is he going to be a 3-and-D type? He diversified his game a little bit. By the way, real quick, KB Thiel says, Saul, and feel free to please put that in there. How many did you make in a row? We're putting you on the spot right here. he really developed a way to be able to play one-on-one in his sophomore year there, Brad, that maybe he didn't possess. And the NBA is so much about spacing one-on-one. To me, that's where he's really improved himself. And I could see him being a pretty proficient scorer at the next level.
He certainly has the tools to do it. I think a lot of the question is, how does he continue to develop his game? Does he have the work ethic? I mean, that was the big thing about Derek Williams. He didn't have the work ethic.
Right.
Whereas a guy like Solomon Hill, good guy in the locker room, continues to work hard, and he's still getting these ridiculous contracts for playing like 4 minutes a game.
For sure.
So that's what's going to come down to Mathurin. How does he adjust to the physicality of playing with grown men? Does he continue to refine his game? Is he a guy who's going to be shooting, 500 jump shots in the gym every night after practice? And if he can be that guy, then yeah, I think he can stick, and he can be surely at least a contributor, if not.
Does he have Does he have Michael Dickerson upside?
Yeah. Dickerson was a better college defender, obviously.
Can he be a 17, 18 point a game guy?
I think he could. I think whether that happens or not, that's, to me, it's such a crapshoot, especially with the wing players in the NBA. You just never know. If you look at the stars right now, did we know if Devin Booker was going to be head and shoulders all these other Kentucky guys?
Right.
No, who's, you look at some of these other guys who, that played at smaller colleges or mid-level colleges, you just kind of never know. There's guys I've fallen in love with in the process. You're like, oh, that guy's a superstar. Some of the Kansas forwards or the Kentucky forwards, and they're like, okay. So right. I just don't know. It's such a crapshoot. But again, when you look at his build, you look at his athleticism, you look at what appears to be a good work ethic, he certainly has the makings of being, a contributor, starter, and maybe possibly a star, whether that's a superstar or a lower tier. Again, we never know because, again, look at the guys who were. Did any of us think Kawhi Leonard was going to be an MVP? We got, right. Hey, that's a really nice piece for the Spurs as a defensive guy. We had, you have no idea. Paul George. Any of us talking Paul George on draft night?
Right.
I actually did like Donovan Mitchell, but that's just because I read that by like a sporting news guy. But you just never know. And but I think Mathurin is a guy. If you look at the guys that come out recently from Arizona, he's certainly a guy. I think I'd bet on him more than Josh Green, or Nico. So
I thought Muehlbach made a really good point. I thought, as Matt Muehlbach does, being that he's smarter than both of us combined. He made he said, I always liked Ben. I thought that he was a top 10 type player, in the NBA draft. He said that 3-pointer and the confidence against TCU, in which he just cleared everybody out, and you could tell he wanted that moment. He said that was something I didn't know that he had. I didn't know that he didn't have it. He said that really goosed him up there, another little level for me right there. And I agree with him on that.
Sorry, the Amazon Prime guy gets stopped outside. The dogs are barking, and they run over my son.
No, you're good.
Yeah, but yeah, that is a big shot. And sometimes it can be one or two plays that really define not only a college career, but project you and catapult you in. And sometimes making a shot here or there, or missing a shot here or there, can really change who you are as a player. So I could definitely see that being, the play that we look back on and goes, up, that was the play that transformed Ben Mathurin from a really good guy to a great guy.
Does Christian Koloko feel like a first-round pick to you? Like just right now, just in a vacuum, does he feel like a first-round pick to you?
He'd have to have a team that falls in love with him.
Mm-hmm.
Because he doesn't have the offensive game for the modern NBA.
Let me ask you this, because this is back when you were covering the team very, very closely. What does he do at this stage better than Lauren Woods?
He's more athletic.
Okay. He can move a little better lateral movement.
Better lateral movement. I think he's might have a better jump shot. Neither guy took many.
Right.
But yeah, I think he had, who's the guy? He used to play for Oklahoma City and Toronto. That's who he reminds me of. The big man on those. Serge Ibaka.
Ibaka.
Yeah.
Okay.
Obviously has to put on more muscle. And can he fill that kind of role? It'd have to be with the right team. Now, if he comes back to Arizona, shows he can hit a 15-foot jump shot occasionally, go out for three, then I think he has a chance to, move up and be a modern big man. And I wouldn't put it past him. We just look how much he's improved since last year,
right,
to this year. So I think he's a guy who might formally test the waters. He's obviously talking to people now. And if he can get that first round guarantee, which I think would be late, I think it might be obviously in the 20s, then he might go. But I think more than likely, knowing the family's importance on education, knowing the family is not desperate for money. From what I think Dad's an engineer,
right.
And I know it's very different being an engineer on another continent than it is here. But I think I could very much see him coming back, because I think he's on progress to get the degree, even work on that jump shot, continue to get bigger and stronger, make up for that lost COVID year in the weight room, and then be a top 15 pick and be a guy who, fits that role. Now, could I see a team taking a flyer on him? Yeah. I could see a team late in the first round being like, yeah, we'll stash this guy away and he can try to develop that jump shot while being paid here. But it would have to be the right situation, the right team,
right?
A team that is looking, it'd have to be the right situation.
This also goes to, Sean Seeley made a great point again, and Saguaro Cougars make great points right here. And he said that does Ben rank? It didn't feel like it, and I don't believe he does, because this is just me coming in off the top of my head if he's a top 10 player. And again, these are all random. These are just people that I was jotting down. But you got Damon, you got Sean, you got Mike Bibby, you got Chris Mills, you got Miles Simon, you got Khalid Reeves, you got Salim Stoudemire, Gilbert Arenas, Michael Dickerson, and DeAndre Ayton right there. And that was just off the top of my head. Do you disagree with any of those?
One of those guys I wouldn't have in the top 10, and I'm trying to think of who it was, but yeah.
Those are just guys that just came off the top of my head.
Yeah, and I think he definitely ranks behind at least 9 of those guys.
Right.
If not more. So yeah.
I think he has top 10 pro potential. How about that?
That he does, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, with Arizona's legacy, it's not that hard to do.
Right.
Because Arizona just hasn't had many, if any, superstars come from the program. A lot of good players, a lot of guys who stuck around and made a lot of money, but yeah, he could easily be the best with just not a whole lot. Again, because the guys who have been fringe superstars have not done it. Gilbert had 3 or 4 years,
right,
of elite play. Bibby had 1 or 2.
I didn't mention Jason Terry. He's obviously on that list.
And Terry had the best prolonged pro career.
Sure.
Ayton's the 3rd guy, if not the 4th guy on so very good player. Lowry has never quite reached. So yeah, I think there's definitely could be a top. I think he'd be a top 5 pro.
Mm-hmm.
But
because
again,
look at it.
The bar is kind of low for that. If there's one knock on Arizona players, it's none of them have been like absolute superstars.
You've had a lot of almost all-stars, the Jeffersons, and some of these guys made a team or two, but the Jeffersons, the Iguodalas, the Terrys, the Bibbies, all these guys were kind of fringe top 25 players. Really, the only one that kind of reached that top 10 status was obviously Gilbert for those couple years that you just mentioned right there.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Sean, he was the 2nd or 3rd guy on that team. He was a very good player. You could argue he was a top 15 small forward, but he wasn't a top 15 player. So
right, for sure.
If Mathurin can become a top 25 type player in the NBA, then certainly and do it for more than 3 or 4 years, he might end up being the best of the bunch. Do I know if he's going to do that? I don't. But again, I think he'll have a good pro career. Have
I told you about the DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX, William?
I need to hear it again.
All right. So you might be saying, I'd like to get into the gambling game right here. The Phoenix Suns are playing, they are going to be playing NBA title favorite Phoenix Suns. By the way, go to GoPHNX, get in all the best Suns coverage right now between Espo and Gerald and everybody over there. Lots of good stuff. But NBA play-in games right now, playoff play-in games right now. If you put down $5, you get $100 in free plays if that team wins. Arizona only. Eligibility restrictions do apply. 21 and up. You got a gambling problem, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. Thanks for letting me remind you about that, William. Real quick, Phoenix Suns. as one of the few people, there's a lot of new Suns fans here in Tucson now, but I've known you about 10 years, you, me, Schuster, about 10, and you and Schuster and a couple other people are really the only real Phoenix Suns fans that I know. We'll welcome other people in here, but when people ask me about the Phoenix Suns, I'll believe it when I see it, because we've had so many different, I mean, everybody brings up Steve Nash, but I mean, even go back to 93, where then, Richard Dumas, who's maybe the only player that could possibly check MJ or at least slow him down. He's dealing with stuff. And then
Ceballos injury that year as well.
Ceballos injury kills you. I mean, obviously, then last year, you're not exactly right with Chris Paul going into the finals. You get up 2-0. I'll just believe it when I see it, even though I'm cautious. I'm tepid in my my endorsement there. What do you think?
Yeah, and you look at, because I think when you look at the East, it just doesn't look that good.
Right.
And I don't know, last year at this time to start the playoffs, we really thought Milwaukee was the team either.
Right.
Milwaukee became the team, and Giannis had his ascension. But I mean, who's the East is weird. I know you like the Heat, but it could be the winner of the West is the team this year. And whether, obviously Memphis looks good and some other teams look good, but even with all those, I mean, are you really saying, I think Memphis is the team? Oh, the Utah Jazz, Nate
Right.
Brady. Yeah, it's kind of crazy because for once, in a weird way, the path is kind of open for the Suns. You don't have, you don't have
LeBron in your way, or
exactly. You don't have LeBron in your way, and who knows what happens if Davis stayed? Again, you can't count on Davis staying healthy. But I mean, are you really afraid of this Clippers team or not Minnesota, but who am I thinking of? The Pelicans.
Right.
I mean, they're not dropping a 30-pound lighter Zion on you by surprise. So things look good for the Suns, but it's still Suns basketball. So something crazy can happen. A meteor might fall on Booker. Chris Paul may, contract malaria. DeAndre Ayton may get drafted in the Bahamian army. As a Suns fan, I will believe it when I see it. But that also comes from my years of being an Arizona fan, of being a Kansas City Chiefs fan. There are a lot of
Yep. My DraftKings pick of the week again is the Hawks to win tonight. So go ahead and take that one. Okay, Brad. Now let's talk about Dalen Terry. A lot of people, I think, had a lot of questions about Dalen Terry and what exactly, what was his role going to be at the University of Arizona. And I think the one thing that he's shown is that he can defend, he can pass, he's a good secondary ball handler. I believe he's got the world to gain by coming back, because if he comes back and he can be a 16 point per game scorer, I think it's impossible not to see him in the first round next year because of all the other things that he can do.
I'm not even sure he has to score that much, to be honest.
Right.
12,
right.
Shoot at a higher percentage.
Right.
Because I think he has 2 paths to the NBA. Right. And you mentioned it as the secondary ball. I'm not sure some good team doesn't think we can turn this guy into a point guard.
Right.
You have him as the understudy. And let's just use the Suns, for example. You don't put him as an understudy to Chris Paul, and then when Paul retires in a couple of years, you put him next to Booker as 2 ball handlers. But I think he can also be a 3-and-D guy. Mm-hmm. Improves the 3. Obviously, the 3's got to get better. So I think he has 2 different paths. I do think if he came out this year, someone late might be really intrigued enough to take him.
Right.
But I think it's also hard to justify taking
a guy who averaged 5.5 points or 6
exactly.
points a game. Right.
It felt like he averaged more, but no, he's 5.5, 6 points a game. So yeah, you can't take that guy, I don't think. But man, I could see someone taking him, especially one of these good teams. It's like you don't need to play for 2 years. But the teams are doing that less and less. Mm-hmm. I mean, it almost seems like they're going to take you, and if you sink or swim, and if you sink, suddenly you're just trade bait because you still got a low salary. Who was the guy from Virginia for the Suns, Guy. I mean, he got a 5-game audition, and it was like, see ya.
It's like, baby, boom, out of here.
So I think Terry would be wise to come back, show that he can be a high 30s 3-point shooter, show that he can score 11 or 12 a game. continue to play defense on 3 or 4 different positions. And then, yes, I think he has a spot in the next level. And frankly, of the guys on this team, he is the guy I would be most confident if there was a futures through the
John
app.
Schuster agrees with you.
I think he's the closest to the guarantee that he could play the 8 to 10 years. Mathurin can certainly, but you could also see Mathurin being out in 4 years if the jump shot fails him at that level. Terry's going to be one of those guys who just people keep bringing in to be a role player. And he may never start, more than 5 games a season, but could play 10 years, a career not unlike Solomon Hill or McConnell, but a different type of player, obviously, but that kind of career.
All of these guys, I think, really benefited, particularly Mathurin and Dalen Terry, with the turnover in coaching right there. The last thing that you want to see with a guy like Dalen Terry is being basically pushed into a Dylan Smith type role where you're told to be a defender and just stand in the corner. I think Lloyd looked at him and it's more of a what can you do as opposed to what you can't do. And you saw him flourish this year. I mean, this is a guy that you watch him out there and Brad, I think you hit the ball out of the park. I think he's the one with the most long-term potential. And I think you got to, give your tip of the cap to Tommy Lloyd for unleashing that.
And in a small way, a guy he does remind me, there's 2 guys, and one did not maximize the potential at all, but there are 2 guys who kind of could do a lot of different things coming into Arizona, and one was Andre Iguodala. And Terry's numbers as a sophomore are eerily similar to Iguodala's as a freshman, minus some of the attitude issues. And the other was ironically Jamel. Jamel in high school could do a lot of things.
Right.
And when he got to Arizona, he forgot how to do most of them. But he could dribble in the open court. He could finish at the rim. He could hit the 3 and end up becoming an undersized stretch 4, which really, he's one of the guys I was most wrong on. But I could see Terry being, and again, Terry, not sure he's quite Iguodala, but a similar career in the NBA. People talk about Iguodala, and yes, he was finals MVP, but for the most part, he's been a really good journeyman player. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I mean that in, the guy's pushing 38, 30, and he's still, he's a loot guy in the NBA, and he could play a few more years if he wants to because he accepts that role. And I think Terry, so I'd be anxious to see, can Terry get to Iguodala-esque numbers as a sophomore and now as a junior? Because Iguodala was only about a 12 and 7 guy.
12,
People
7,
forget
5.
He wasn't a great college player.
And that's how you can also spot a U of A fraud a mile away. If they tell you that their favorite player at the University of Arizona, not in the pros, but at the University of Arizona was Andre Iguodala, you tell them you did not watch Andre Iguodala. You did not watch that 03-04 team.
No, he was. And again, there's some stuff that happened behind the scenes. He kind of checked out. There was some interpersonal. His relationship with Hassan Adams became strained. He all but chased Dennis Lattimore out of the program.
Right.
So Iguodala. And to be frank, he and Lute Olson butted heads. And he even told the story, it wasn't until he got to Sixers camp.
Right.
And they were showing drills, and he was one of 3 guys who knew all the drills. And the 2 others were 12-year NBA vets.
Right.
And he's like, oh, I get it.
At that point, you start to get it. All right, William.
This is what Lute was doing.
Let's talk some football, some U of A football. All right. You can't really tell a lot from the spring game. I get all that. I'm much more of a what does it look like type thing out there. And I know that you had baseball that day. Were you able to check some?
No, I saw the game. I didn't see it in person, but I saw it on, I checked out the Pac-12 network. And then when they switched to Stanford, I went to the Pac-12 app and found the game. So I watched just about all of it.
The first thing that stuck out to me was that, Marcus Williams. I always forget about Marcus Williams. Oh, what high school did Marcus Williams go to in Seattle? Do you remember?
No. If you say it, I'll know it.
Yeah, me too.
Federal Way? No, it wasn't Federal Way. That was like D.
It wasn't Rainier Beach. It wasn't Garfield.
There's one of the other name ones.
Was it Franklin?
Might have been. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Either
People
way.
Forget, honestly, Marcus Williams was one of those guys. And again, the stats didn't tell the whole story, but he put up amazing stats in 2 years.
Especially as a freshman, he was 15, 6, and 5. And I'm like, wow. And he was smooth doing it too.
He was one of the most courteous, nice kids I covered in recruiting. and came here and, was kind of a butthead at times. Who the other one was? Chris Rogers.
Right.
Oh, the super polite guys in the recruiting. Like,
we
would
will
come by and shake your hand and remembered who you were and Mr. This and thank you, sir. And again, Marcus Williams the same way. And then
Chris Rogers, though, graduates with 2 degrees within 3.5 years. So I'm going to tip my cap to them. But yes, I saw Chris Rogers at the U of A Rec Center many times. Most of those stories that people do tell you about the U of A Rec Center and Chris Rogers are true.
You want a comparison? You know who I saw all the time at the Rec Center? Chris Mills. Guess what Chris Mills did? Shot jumpers, would not play with anyone. We asked him why. He's like, why should I? He's like, I got to work on my jump shot. I'm not getting any better playing you guys.
That's a great point. You know what? Backing up William is not going to get Chris Mills better for that first round deal.
No, D'ing me up is not going to help him with anything other than maybe nothing.
What I liked about the football team, and again, I know that DeLora throws the early pick, McLeod throws the pick 6. I get that. The quarterback situation still feels much better than it did at the end of last year. And honestly, the receivers, and again, it's difficult to be able to ascertain everything, but the receivers just look different. I mean, we haven't even spent a lot of time talking about Kean Burnett. Kean Burnett, first of all, looks like a monster out there. He boxes out the safety for the first catch, then gets a touchdown. There's a lot more to work with on the offensive side of the ball there, William.
Yeah, the receivers pass the eyeball test. They're big, they're athletic. And again, I'm not necessarily looking at results other than, Burnett made a couple tough catches too. Mm-hmm. I think it was it Majan Wright also made a difficult catch, something guys did not necessarily do last year. I'm not, again, because you don't know how much no offense, I didn't have my roster from, so I couldn't tell were they going up against the first defense, the third defense, with Sam Thomas sneaking into the corner of the end zone from the sideline.
Right.
But here's what I looked at. Jordan DeLara is a better looking quarterback than Gunnar Cruz was last year. Noah Fafita.
Look, we got to talk about Noah.
Throws a heck of a football. Now, again, the height's a concern, some other things, but man, that guy throws a good ball. And DeLora throws a better ball than Cruz. And Cruz looked okay last year.
How would you know what kind of ball Cruz threw, though? Because it was always 40 yards out of bounds or 2 yards in front of him.
Yeah, it looked good coming off the hand. But again, he floated things. He did not have, and DeLora doesn't have that ball jumping off the hand. If anything, McLeod's got a stronger arm, and I think Fafita obviously has a stronger arm, maybe not distance-wise, but from explosiveness. But you don't always need to throw a 100-mile-per-hour fastball to complete a pass in college football. So, yeah, those 3 look better than the 4 we saw last year, which was
what's unique?
Combination of Cruz, Ashworth, Doyle, and Plummer.
Doyle. Be careful on Doyle. Doyle's got a cult following around these parts, amongst one. But with
he's playing in Germany.
Right. No, I think it's in Spain.
Oh, is it Spain? Oh, that's
I think he's playing in Spain, if I'm not mistaken. So again, seems like a good kid. So that's cool. Defensively then, with it's people ask me all the time, like, what about the defense? And here's what I say. Hunter Echols is the USC transfer that has probably been the best pass rusher in camp. With Jalen, and so who knows with that? A lot of people ask about Jalen Harris. Is this the year? And I always say, well, it better be the year because it's the last year. Because I look at the kid. He comes from first of all, he's a great kid. Comes from great parents, great lineage. You look at him; he looks the part. What's been the holdback to getting into that 7-8 sack realm, Brad?
Well, scheme,
right?
Coaching changes. I mean, how many different defensive coordinators has he had?
Great point.
4?
At least 3, maybe 4.
Position changes.
Right.
He's been an outside linebacker. He's been a defensive end. He's been the quote unquote edge rusher. So I think there's a lot of that. I think he came in and again, he just hasn't been able to put together. But there's been a lot of circumstances, and frankly, I think a lot of it is when you're continuously having to learn a new deal, which he's doing again this year. But we will see. He's also, matured physically. I think, you look at freshman year, he was kind of caught behind some people. I think that was the year Kylan Wilborn was really good, or maybe it was. The
year where he had 10 sacks and then never played again.
Yeah. I think just left UNLV or something. I don't know. So yeah, I think it's hard to put anything on either Harris, to be honest. But yeah, this is his year to show out. And frankly, I think his brother probably has to have a pretty good year too to avoid slipping down. Because again, this staff, I know people. I keep seeing people freaking out about guys transferring out. I'm like,
who cares?
They're the
a lot of
Sumlin
these
guys.
Yeah, there's Sumlin guys. A lot of them are okay.
And not even some. A couple of them I didn't realize were scholarship players. I had forgotten.
Right.
Who was the linebacker who just left? I'm like, who is he?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, so, but
a lot of Jabbar triplets in there.
Did Triplet leave?
Didn't he leave?
I thought he was here. I thought because he's
coming. Oh, is he back? I saw him in the news. Maybe.
No. I actually like Triplet. I think it was Jackson Bailey or Bailey Jackson or Bailey. I don't know.
Right.
No, I think Triplet's here. I think Triplet's still here.
Brad, I'm going to put you on the spot here, though. Sean Seeley, great point. I'm really thinking 4 wins this year, maybe 5. If I were to give William that line right there, 4 wins, over, under, where's Brad going?
You give me 4 or you give me 4.5?
I'm giving you 4, but you can't choose 4. You got to go over or under, one way or the other.
I think I'd lean towards the under. I think it's 4. I think 4. I could see 5. I'll go over. I'll say over. But so much of it depends what kind of start they get out to.
Right.
You've got to pick off. I think you got to pick off still 2 of the 3 non-conference, and that's tough because San Diego State is San Diego. They're not going to be quite as good as last year, but that's still a quality football program. North Dakota State, you don't know what you're going to get. They're very good for what they are, but at the end of the day, they're basically a MAC team at the best. But they could come to Tucson and upset you, and they could upset you by 14 points, or they could get their doors blown off.
You might be thinking to yourself, where could I find these odds, Mike or Brad? You can find them on the DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX. All right, NBA play-in games going on. Here's where you put in $5, you get $100 in free plays if that team wins. But like Brad was just talking about, though, if you're looking for those OUs, DraftKings Sportsbook app is the only place to go for those. Continue there, Brad. You gave me a great segue.
I'm not counting on beating Mississippi State at home, but then again, is Mississippi State any good?
Right.
I mean, they got Leach. When was the last time they traveled this far west? Is it going to be a night game?
Right.
I mean, is it going to be basically 11 o'clock kickoff back there or 9 o'clock, whatever? So I don't know. And then you look at it, I think they've got a couple of the weaker Pac-12 teams early. So it could be something. And they had the opportunity last year for this and failed to build up wins and build up confidence and learn. And frankly, it sounds cliche, but it is true. Learn how to win. If they in many ways knew how to win, and I'm going to put that on the staff as well, you probably find a way to beat BYU. You find a way to beat NAU. I can't believe I'm saying this still. You find a way to beat Utah. That was a winnable game.
NAU.
They didn't necessarily find a way to beat Cal. They just lucked into the way to beat. But those were winnable games.
Right.
You hung with some teams. Heck, I think the final score was 17. But they hung with ASU for 3 quarters. They hung with UCLA till McLeod went down. They were in that Oregon game. They were also completely embarrassed by San Diego State. So, and pushed around by NAU. I think a lot of it's going to be, can you get one of those early wins? And if you can, or get 2 of those early wins, and then suddenly, you get into Pac-12 play against some, there are some of the lesser teams there. Then you could have that 5-win season. But I could easily, suddenly you lose by 14, 15, 21 at San Diego State, the new stadium. Mississippi State comes in and bullies you. You get upset by North Dakota State, even though, again, if Arizona's 1-1 or 2-0, they'd probably be the favorite on DraftKings, but they could be a dog to a 1AA team.
As long as they're not a dog to NAU when they play in 2 years.
Then suddenly, if you're 0-3, then maybe you're looking at it could be bleak.
Got to get one of those games is what William's saying. One of those out of conference.
I think you got to get 2. I think you got to get.
Okay.
I would think 2 to get to the 5. Okay. But if you're looking right around the 4, then you got to get 1.
All right, Brad. Before we sign off here, speaking of people who know how to win, Arizona women's basketball, Adia Barnes. Obviously, we all grew up watching her play here. Coming back to coach, she obviously knows what she's doing. A lot of people.
I went to college with her, so I don't know about growing up, but
Well,
she lived in my dorm for a year.
Wow. All right. Well, you were an RA, right?
I was her RA, well, in the dorm at the time. Yeah.
Nice.
Yep.
Was this I'll ask that later. But a lot of people are wondering, they're like, oh, well, she's losing all these players. Here's what I think happened. And again, I'm not the women's basketball expert that some others are, but here's what I think happened. Arizona won got to the national title game, spearheaded obviously by Aari McDonald. There's no doubt about that, with some other good players around. This past year, Aari's gone, and there's still some good players there, but I think there was also a little bit of, pardon the pun, a little bit of dead weight there. Dia Barnes bringing in a top 5 class, multiple McDonald's All-Americans. I look at this as a lot of these kids are probably just not going to be playing this year. I mean, I look at it and, these weren't, outside of Ben Duyaney, these weren't a lot of players that were playing there, Brad. So I think people need to chill a little bit on it. I'm not too worried about it. What do you say?
No, and you look at it, and I think Copeland's leaving. She came in. She never looked like she was quite in the playing shape that Adia Barnes, because her style is certainly not Tommy Lloyd up tempo. They get up and down a little bit.
Right.
Yaney was really nice, but she's kind of a duplicate of Pellington and maybe less talented.
Right.
Coy Love never matched her numbers from things. Vonleh just never lived up to the hype. And while you could maybe put some of that on Adia, and I don't want to be, a Adia apologist. I mean, certain coaches can blend these weird talents.
Mm-hmm.
But people are losing their minds over Taylor Chavez. They're like, oh, she's a sharpshooter, and I get in trouble on Facebook all the time. She's a sharpshooter. No, she had one really good shooting year playing next to Ionescu in Oregon.
Right.
She's a career 30-something% shooter. That's not a sharpshooter. Sharpshooter is Salim.
Right.
And she's just retiring from basketball. But you look at a couple of the other international. One of them played 2 games.
Right.
So do you want to lose 7 or whatever it is? I think it's 10 actually.
I think it's not. Yeah, I think 9 or 10. Yeah, but
they have 15 scholarships. But yeah, you're going to bring in some transfers. I think maybe you hope now you can mesh the transfers a little bit better. I think, she's been very good at bringing transfers in the past. Ari was a transfer.
Mm-hmm.
Pellington's a transfer.
Pellington's transfer from Oklahoma, right? Exactly.
Some of these others didn't mesh as well, and that's that's what happens with the transfer market.
All right. He's William Brad Allis. You can follow him on Twitter, WSR Brad. Brad, when is your podcast? You haven't had a podcast out recently. When are you going to be having one out?
No, unfortunately, I dealt with the passing of a dog. I had the kids in the house. So I'm hoping to bring it back next week and kind of be consistent through the summer. But yeah, life just kind of kicked me in the butt. So, but yeah, I think we're back.
All right, Brad. As always, Brad's going to be a weekly guest on here. Love having Brad on. Love bothering Brad, picking his brain. But Brad, again, really appreciate. Oh, hold on a second. Hold on. Sorry about that. All right, Brad, really, really appreciate you, my man.
Sounds good.
All right, talk to you soon. For Brad Allis, I'm Mike Luke. Thanks for listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast.